flies into Kirtland Air Force Base in an F-4, Phantom F-4.
Wow.
Okay, and here I am out on the flight line in my little red Sierra, and here comes this F-4 that parks right beside my car, and the canopy opens up, and here comes this figure, that's iconic,
Sure, yeah.
Stepping out and going down the ladder, and you're sitting there, and you're like, my God, this is living history.
Yeah.
And what an honor to be able to
I'll bet.
meet him.
I'll bet.
So anyway, he came over, shook my hand, we introduced each other, and he said, okay, sir, I will now take you to your hotel. And he said, oh, is that your car right there? I said, yeah, well, if you don't, I can get a staff car. No, take me in your car. So there we are.
Wow.
I got Chuck Yeager in my passenger seat of my two-seater Pontiac Fiero, and we're tooling around Albuquerque.
Wow.
And talking, shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
And it was just an awesome experience.
I bet it was.
One-on-one contact with him for probably 30, 40 minutes, by the time we got where we needed to go.
Wow.
And so I get him to his hotel, get him settled in, and I remember one of the first things he said, Garcia, go out and find me some beer. And I said, yes, sir. And I remember when I talked to his wife, she made it pretty clear that he really shouldn't be drinking. And so anyway, but when you're a captain and he's a general, they're going to pretty much, you say, yes, sir. And
sure.
I did, got him the beer. And I came and picked him up later, took him to the function. We had a great time. The next day, we reversed course, drove him in my car back to his airplane, and he flew off. But before he flew, he reached into his duffel bag, and he handed me his autobiography, a signed copy.
Wow.
This is for you. Thank you for everything. Really appreciate it. And, God be with you, and thank you for your service.
Wow.
And I said, well, thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure, and stuff like that. So saluted, and he went on his way, and I went on my way, and it's now a memory, okay?
Yeah.
But what a memory.
Yeah.
An actual living legend.
Really is. And you, being from Freer, Alfredo, you probably wouldn't have had that opportunity if you hadn't have joined the Air Force, yeah.
I got to meet the guy that broke the sound barrier,
Exactly, yeah. I mean, they made movies about this guy. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, The Right Stuff. What a great movie. I mean, they made a wonderful movie. Yeah. So, and now being in the Air Force, it helped you transition to your career now at Raytheon, right?
Yes, it did. Correct. Exactly. Matter of fact, without it, again, without that Air Force career, it opened this opportunity. I remember I was living in Tucson, Arizona at the time, stationed at Davis Moth, and went back to my very first assignment base, and that's where I retired out of. Mm-hmm. And I remember I retired about a half a year before I retired. I had a friend of mine that worked there, and he was the chief engineer there, and he said, hey, I know you're retiring. You want a job when you retire? I said, sure, I'll take a job at Raytheon. And he says, well, here, fill out the resume, do this, and give it to me, and I'll let you know. So anyway, I gave him the resume. A couple weeks later, he calls me and says, hey, our chief of system engineering, our department manager, wants to talk to you. They want you. And I said, okay, let's go talk. So they took me to lunch. They made me an offer at lunch. Huh. And I said, you guys realize I still got about 6 months before I retire. I said, no problem, we'll wait for you.
Really?
We'll hold the position for you. So
no kidding.
6 months, they held the position for me. I retired from the Air Force. On one day, the very next day, I was out of uniform and in civilian clothes at Raytheon. Didn't even take a break.
No kidding. And
now,
what do you do with Raytheon?
18 years later, I almost got another career with Raytheon. I'll be retiring next year with about 19 years service with Raytheon. So 2 careers in a lifetime. That's
Absolutely.
pretty good.
Exactly. And in addition to your careers, I mean, you have some pretty interesting hobbies. I mean, you run marathons, you do cosplay, you're an amateur astronomer. I mean, tell me a little bit about all that. I mean, you're up to how many marathons now?
Okay. Well, marathon, I am a runner. I never thought I would hear myself say that years and years ago. Mm-hmm. For a kid in high school, I was more of a nerd and geek in high school than an athlete.
Sure.
And I could barely run the 600-yard dash, without dying.
Right.
And when I came to the military, a mile and a half, I could do it, and it was good. But during one of my assignments here in Los Angeles, in the 86 through 90 time frame, in 1988, I went as a spectator to the running of the 3rd annual Los Angeles Marathon, downtown Los Angeles.
Sure.
And I went there as a spectator, purely as a spectator. I was just curious. I heard about it on the radio. I got to go check this out, because I just love exploring and kind of doing new things and stuff like that. So, this would be kind of cool. So I went down there, not expecting it to be a life-changing event. But I got there, and I was literally there for hours, watching people cross the finish lines, from the very first 2-hour, 15-minute runners to the 5-6 hour runners. And I saw the whole range of emotion, both men and women, as they were crossing the finish line. And I don't know, it sparked something in me. And I said, you know what, I got to do this. And one of the things about me is when I set my mind to something and I get focused, I do it, okay? It's just a drive that I have inside of me.
Sure.
And I thank the military for that. The military gave me the discipline and to recognize that and to execute on it. But anyway, so I say, I'm going to do this. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to start reading on how to run marathons. I'm going to start my training in August of 88. That was March 88 when I went. So a few months later, I started my training. And I just did, half a mile a day. Then I started gradually adding miles until I built up myself to 8 miles a day, 5 days a week. So about 40 miles per week. And I ran my very first marathon in March of 1989, the Los Angeles 4th annual Los Angeles Marathon. And from that point, I said, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do for many, 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 many years to come. So I laid out a plan. I said, this is what I want to do. I want to reach 30 years of running. And right now, I am on my 29th year of running.
My goodness, congratulations.
I stuck to it, okay? And
sure.
One of the things, I'm a planner, an executor. I love to develop plans and execute them. And I sat down, I said, this is what I want to do. I'm going to run 1 or 2 marathons for a couple of years, and I'm going to step it up 3 or 4, then 5 or 6. And by the time I'm 50, I want to do 50 marathons, okay? So that was my goal. I met that goal, okay?
Wonderful.
I said, okay, now, the next 15 years or so, by the time I'm 65, I want to do at least 130 marathons. I am now at 125.
Wow. No kidding.
Come March of next year, I'll have my 131st marathon. I will have exceeded my goal before turning 65, which is in April of 2018.
My goodness. Congratulations. That's a feat.
It was a lifestyle-changing event. And now I am a runner. I love running. I'm out there 5 days a week, on average, 40 miles a week, and have completed 125 marathons. Like I said, I'm on my road to meeting my goal at 65. And at 65, I will do an assessment and probably try to push for 150 before I'm 70.
Wow.
And at 70, I'll make a decision, and I'll go from there. And maybe by the time I'm in my 80s, 200 marathons.
Wow.
Somewhere along there.
Folks, Fred and I, Alfredo and I, we talk a lot over Facebook, and it's really this guy, and we're talking with Alfredo Garcia Jr. here, and Alfredo posts these, a lot of times, posts these deals where on your lunch break, you go run on your lunch break at work, don't you?
Yeah, I have the time at work.
Yeah.
And, it gives me it's like we have a gym there, so the job encourages, physical fitness.
Sure.
And because they get a better worker, right? That's
exactly.
Medical problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, and if I can't run at work, I'll run right after work. Or sometimes when I get home at night, I'll get my run in. And about 5 years ago, I was very, very fortunate to meet this wonderful lady. And she wasn't much of a runner, but she was kind of game to doing a little bit of running.
Sure.
So she had that spark in her. So I lit the spark, and we did a 5K 5 years ago, and she liked it. So I said, hey, come on, let's up the ante a little bit. You want to do a 10K? You want to do it?
Sure.
Let's do it. Now, almost 5 years later, she has run 31 half marathons.
My goodness. So you both, and this is an activity that y'all do together, and it seems like y'all have a great relationship, and y'all do cosplay together, right?
Yeah. You find that person that clicks with you. I'm not a quitter. I've been through 2 marriages. Okay?
Sure.
I'm not afraid to admit that.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't quit. And on this 3rd time, this is definitely it. Obviously, this lady is like the yin to my yang. We fit together. Okay.
Sure.
We were meant to cross our paths at this time in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, she likes to run. She's completed 31 half marathons. She's catching up with me pretty fast.
Wow. Well, and
some half marathons we run together. Others, I run the marathon. There's a corresponding half marathon being run at the same time. So
sure.
She runs it, waits for me at the end.
Absolutely.
But,
and
you're a remarkable woman.
And speaking of that, speaking of your lady here, y'all do a lot of cosplay together too, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And for those of you that don't know what cosplay is, because that may sound like a foreign term,
sure, tell us.
An abbreviation for 2 words called costume play. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know right away you think, oh wow, no, it is geeky. I admit it, and I'm a geek. I admit it 100%. Okay.
Sure.
And I make no qualms about it. Everybody who knows me knows my geeky stuff.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I can't think of anything better to do as a cosplayer to imitate or dress up like your favorite character, whether it be Superman, Batman, Hawkeye from the Avengers. Any character. We do, right now, we are up to about 20 different cosplays that we do as a couple. We do Gomez and Morticia. We do Prince Charming and Cinderella.
Sure.
We do Sam and Cora from Tron Legacy. We do Hawkeye and Black Widow from the
right.
Avengers. And the list just goes on and on. And this is so much fun because here we are. I'm in my mid-60s. My lady's in her mid-50s.
Mm-hmm.
And we're cosplaying. We're actually interacting with people that are half, in their 20s.
That's what I was going to say. You associate cosplay with kids who are in their 20s. You guys are in your 60s and 50s doing it, and that.
Right, and we have other friends in our age group that are doing it as well. And it is so much fun until you try it. It's one of the things you try. You're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. But
sure,
I guarantee you, most of the time you like it.
Absolutely.
And, so anyway,
it's kind of like Halloween. It's kind of like Halloween every time you do it, right?
It is Halloween year round, okay?
Yeah, really.
We probably attend 8-9 conventions a year.
Yeah.
And most of them here in California, because California is big on it.
Sure.
But also Nevada, a couple of the surrounding areas, but a lot of it's here in California.
Absolutely. And
California is just really, really, really cool about that stuff.
And real quick here, you're also big, real quick, into amateur astronomy, something you've been doing since you were 9 years old back in Freer, right?
That's exactly right. Amateur astronomer now for a long, long time, 55 years. And all started with a pair of binoculars that I found in the trash there back in Freer. And I fixed them up, and I pointed them up at the sky at a particular cluster known as M45, the Pleiades cluster. And I saw these 6 or 7 little blue-white stars with this little kind of haze, bluish haze around it. And that sparked my imagination. And at that time, 9 years old, I went to the libraries there in Freer and in school, and I read every single book they had on astronomy at least 2 or 3 times. And I self-taught myself astronomy. Nobody taught me. I taught myself. And by the time I was 16, I built my first telescope.
Wow.
And then as time went on, I've had several telescopes, and currently I have state-of-the-art. And I do astrophotography, taking pictures through my telescope. Some of my images have won awards. There's one particular conference here in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Foresight Telescope Makers Conference Astronomy Expo. Mm-hmm. It's up in the mountains, about 3 hours north of here. And every year you get amateur astronomers from all over the country come down.